And you're good to go, Eric.
All right. Thank you, Allie, and thank you, Christine, for having us. So welcome, Jean. And
Thank you.
so, as Allie said, my name is Eric. I'm the education coordinator and a field biologist with Atlantic Marine Conservation Society. We're also known as AMCs, so if you hear me say that, it's our organization. A little bit easier to say. Um, so I am going to, let's see if I can get this to cooperate with me. There we go. So before I get too far into the presentation at all, I just want to take a quick second to kind of acknowledge some of our partners and sponsors. We really couldn't do what we do without them, so I feel like it's important to acknowledge them. Just a quick learning objectives of what we're going to be talking about today. And Allie did mention it, but especially with groups, I really like to have an interactive, more of a discussion rather than talking at you. So I do have a question here and there. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Or if you have any comments or anything like that. I like to be able to talk with people, not at people. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to who we are as an organization, who Atlantic Marine Conservation Society is. Then I'm going to get into what is climate change, what causes climate change, how does climate change affect marine mammals and sea turtles, which are the animals that we work with, and how you can help. And I do want to give you, to let you know that I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the science of climate change, so it's not going to be data heavy. It's going to be more of a general discussion about it. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask. So to start us off is who is AMCs. We're a group of individuals, very dedicated individuals for the promotion of marine conservation through action. We don't want to just talk about it, we want to actually do something about it. So there's a variety of groups of individuals that we rely on heavily. The first ones I'm going to mention are our volunteers. So our volunteers can do anything with us. Some of the projects that we do for marine conservation are necropsies, which is an animal autopsy on sea turtles and marine mammals like seals, dolphins, whales, porpoises. We also do educational outreaches like these programs, and we do beach cleanups. COVID has thrown everything for a whirl, so we're trying to adjust, but we're still promoting people to get out and about to do local beach cleanups and following COVID safety guidelines as well. Next group are students. I like to consider anyone that's willing to learn as a student, no matter the age. In this photo here, we have one of our past interns doing an external examination on a Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. All the animals that we work with are federally protected, so the next group is different levels of government, from municipalities all the way up to the federal government. So we have a very close relationship with them. And then there's actually only 6 full-time staff members, and we respond to animals all along New York's coastlines. So as staff, we really can't respond to all of the coastlines, so we rely heavily on the general public to report animals. So they are big contributors to help us do what we do. And we do have a hotline at the end of the presentation to be able to report any sea turtles and marine mammals that you might see to that number. So we're going to jump into what is climate change. And before I get into this too much, Jean, do you have any background in climate change, or what piqued your interest in this presentation tonight?
Well, primarily because it's such a major issue. It affects every part of our lives, and it's not anything we can ignore. We have to address it now.
Right.
Hopefully it's not too late.
That's one of the hardest questions to answer about
Right.
climate change, is if it's too late or not. There's a lot that goes into that answer, and it's very, very scientific heavy, especially data heavy. It's not a simple question, and I can't give you a straight answer on it. I can kind of give you the background knowledge, but yeah, I can't give you a straight answer or not. So I'm going to start off with the basics about what is climate change. And climate change is a very broad term in the sense that it's really just defined as a significant change in any measure of climate that occurs over an extended period of time. So this is more of an umbrella term, and a lot of people might use the term interchangeably, but global warming is kind of is underneath climate change. There are areas where the Earth might be warming, but there's also areas where it can be cooling at different time periods. So climate change is the overall term for it. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit, where I'm not going to use global warming, I'm going to use climate change. And what causes the climate to change? Do you have any guesses on that, Jean? Or Christine, if you want to jump in too, I'll include you on this.
Oh, so many of the things that we do,
So I'm going to start with natural causes, because there are natural causes and then human-induced causes. So I'm going to start with natural causes. Do you have any guesses on that?
The permafrost is deteriorating.
Yep.
And that's really a challenge, big challenge. And the reflection of the sun is not reflecting off the glaciers anymore as much, because there aren't as many not as many glaciers. So
yep,
that's heating up the Earth.
Yep. So you're getting to kind of towards the last part of the natural causes I'm going to talk about, which is actually really a big one, a big topic, which is actually called the greenhouse effect. And I'll explain more what that is in a second. But I just want to touch on a couple other ones. So this is an image of what's called the global conveyor belt. And this in itself doesn't necessarily influence climate change, but it's kind of a tool that helps change the climate in the sense of all the water throughout the world travels the world, in the oceans at least. So the global conveyor belt shows that. And if something's going to happen in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, water might be cooling or warming, that water is going to be traveling all over the world. So it's not just in one specific location, it's going to impact the whole world. So there's this theory called there's a one ocean instead of the individual ones, because they are all connected in some way. So the global conveyor belt is more of a tool. The sun is also a big impact on climate change, and really the radiation off of it. And it's not a consistent thing. It does change. So that can be another reason why some people think that if an area is cooling, it's not climate change. Or if it's not warming consistently, it's not climate change. There are fluxes of this. So the sun doesn't have an impact. And this isn't a comprehensive list of things, of natural things. These are just some examples. Another one is volcanic eruptions. A lot of the materials that can come out of volcanoes can be floating in the atmosphere for an extended period of time. And this is getting where you were talking about the sun reflecting off of the permafrost and things like that with either absorption or reflection. The materials that are going to be floating in the atmosphere from volcanic eruptions are actually going to cool the planet rather than warm it up, because the sun can't get down to the ground to be able to warm up the Earth. So that heat or radiation from the sun is actually going to get reflected and cool the Earth. So that's part of the greenhouse effect. And here is a diagram of it. So we have the sun radiating light down below to the Earth, and that light or the radiation can either get trapped within the atmosphere or it can get reflected back out into space. So when it gets trapped in the atmosphere, it can keep warming the Earth. So greenhouse gases, the main ones are actually water. Water vapor is the most common one. There's carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, CFCs, which are chlorofluorocarbons, which are man-made, and then methane. Those are the greenhouse gases. So I won't go into the scientific part of how those do everything, but those are the materials that can either absorb or reflect the radiation within the atmosphere. And like I said, greenhouse gases are actually natural. It's some activities might be changing the amount of greenhouse gases more so than others. And that can have an impact on the temperature of a planet. So this is an image of Mercury, Venus, and Earth. And the blue rings around each planet are actually the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. So you would think with the closer the planet is to the sun, the warmer it is. So you see Mercury is 330 degrees Fahrenheit, but Venus has a very thick blue ring around it. So a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's farther away from the sun than Mercury, but it is 855 degrees Fahrenheit. So greenhouse gases, in particular, this one is carbon dioxide, has a huge, huge impact on the temperature of the planet itself. So Earth has a much smaller ring, and that's actually, there's similar amount of carbon dioxide between the planets, but a lot of the carbon on Earth is actually in the oceans instead of the atmosphere or into the ground of Earth. So it's not free floating into the atmosphere. So that's a big reason why the temperature is a lot lower than the other two planets. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to get into generation of greenhouse gases. Do you want to take any guesses on some of the human produced or ways that humans produce greenhouse gases? This, like I said, on the natural ones, this is not a comprehensive list, so there's going to be some examples. So if you have any ideas, love to hear them.
Well, planes, cars.
Yep.
I've also read one of the undercounted or ones that you don't think about every day are like production of meat. Like there's a lot of methane involved in that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's very true.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
Yep. So those are two important ones. So I'm gonna cover a couple examples. In transportation, I'm gonna do that as the comprehensive term for planes, trains, automobiles, everything like that. And livestock, I'm gonna use that as the inclusive term for the cows, which I will talk about in a second. The first one I'm going to talk about is fertilizers. Fertilizers have a lot of carbon and nitrogen, and they can have methane mixed in. So with a lot of planting going on, and this isn't isolated just to fertilizers. This is kind of fertilizers the basis of what can happen, and a lot of these are connected in a way, but those fertilizers are going to have extra methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen that can get released into the environment from these plants that don't absorb them. The next one is deforestation. So deforestation, plants in general can absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but with deforestation in particular, trees are being cut down. They're not able to take in the carbon dioxide to produce just oxygen. So it can be a slower rate of the carbon dioxide being absorbed into plants in general. But deforestation also has a lot of machinery involved, which can produce greenhouse gases just from the exhaust or the industry created to produce those machineries, that machinery, a lot of connected parts to it. And like you said, Christine, livestock is a big one. Livestock is actually the second largest source of emissions for greenhouse gases, in particular methane. Just because of the waste produced from livestock, there's a lot of methane being produced. And but livestock's also connected to possibly deforestation and fertilizer because they need the space to grow, they need the food and the feed. So a lot of these are really connected. So it's not just one thing. And then the last one I'm going to mention is burning of fossil fuels. So a lot of industry can produce greenhouse gases. This is the largest source of carbon dioxide emissions when contributing to greenhouse gases. Any questions about that part of it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't realize about the fertilizers.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
very.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, like I said, like I keep reiterating, this is not a comprehensive list, so there are a lot of smaller things that can be done, or just things that you might not think about that happen in your everyday activities.
Mm-hmm.
And fertilizers you might think of being good for the plants and everything like that, but you're adding extra nutrients or just substances to these plants that aren't in that area. So you're introducing new things to them. So I can possibly add to the environment in general. Now I'm going to talk about how climate change is affecting the animals that we work with, or marine life in general, and then going to get more specific to the animals that we work with. So I'm hoping that you've never seen this kind of photo in real life, but coral doesn't normally look like that. So this is bleached coral, and coral is actually a good indicator of the health of an ocean or that area. Coral reefs are an ecosystem within itself. It can be very, very productive, but is highly sensitive to climate change, in particular, the temperature of the water. And when there's several reasons that coral can be bleached, which means it's lost its color, but poor ocean health can be one of those indicators. And sea turtles can rely on coral reefs for food, shelter, everything like that in the warmer areas, not so much up here. But sea turtles are affected by the coral reef's health. So I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but there are 4 species of sea turtles that can be found around Long Island's waters. And I'm not going to go in depth about these species, but if you do have questions, feel free to ask. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Atlantic green sea turtle. That one you can identify by the starburst shaped pattern on its shell. So right here, it's got that nice specific pattern to that species. Then we have the loggerhead sea turtle. Has a very, very thick head and an orange color overall to its body. That's how you can identify that one. These 2 species are threatened species. The next 2 I'm going to talk about are endangered species. So first we have the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. Smaller than the green or the loggerhead, but it has a heart-shaped shell to it, or carapace. And then the leatherback sea turtle. Leatherback is a very, very large animal. It's the largest sea turtle species, and it's got these ridges along its shell, and that's how you can identify that one. So like I said, the top 2 are threatened, and the bottom 2 are endangered species. Then we have cetaceans around Long Island. Cetaceans means whales, dolphins, or porpoises. We have a lot more species than on this slide, but here are a couple of, or a few of the more common ones we see. So minke whales and humpback whales for baleen whales, and then harbor porpoises and short-beaked common dolphins for toothed whales. Have you ever seen any of these animals so far around Long Island, Jean or Christine?
No.
No, I haven't. I can't say I have.
Okay. Did you know that these animals are around?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I heard about the humpback that they just untangled. Hopefully it survived.
Oh.
We were actually part of that. We didn't actually do the disentanglement itself, but we partook in the monitoring of the animal. We were out on the water with a variety of organizations, but we were part of that whole event.
That was just incredible to hear how many pounds of cable, etc., was attached. It's just tragic, just positively tragic.
Yes,
Makes you sick.
it was incredible to see that out in the water. I was out there, and it was just I couldn't fathom how that whale was able to really survive. It was incredible, but glad we got it untangled and everything like that. It swam off. We haven't heard any reports of it otherwise so far. So,
okay. Was it tagged by any chance? Were you able to tag it at all, or is
we were not. No.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last group of animals I'm going to talk about are seals. These are the 4 more common species of seals that you can see around New York. There is technically a 5th, but it's a rare sighting. So we have harbor seals and gray seals, which are the 2 most common species we see. And then we have hooded and harp seals. The bottom 2 are what's called ice seals, and that means they spend most of the time up on ice. So we don't have much of that around here, so they're just around here in our coldest months. So typically February or March, and then they head back north to the colder areas. But gray seals, we're starting to get reports, or we've heard reports that people have seen them all year round. But they're here primarily in the winter time, just like the harbor seals, typically from November to about April or so, around that time frame. Have you seen any of these species before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The harbor seal. I don't know about the gray seal, but the harbor seals have routinely are at Cupsog, so I see them there.
Yep. You can see gray seals sometimes at Cupsog. Harbor seals are definitely the primary species.
Yeah.
Cupsog is actually one of the areas that we do seal surveys. We'll go out there and observe that haul out site and count how many seals there are, see if they're actually there or not, seeing if they're healthy, taking plenty of photos. But we're out there quite often in the winter. A very good spot to see them. So now I'm going to talk about how these animals are impacted by climate change. So rising sea levels is one of the ways they can be affected. So seals, in this case, can be affected by the rising sea levels. Can take away some of their areas where they might haul out, or they might breed and give birth. So these areas can be fewer and fewer based off of rising sea levels, and they're not species that we see around here. So, but there have been studies that have proven this for species like the Hawaiian monk seal, or the northern elephant seals in California. So there is evidence that rising sea levels do impact these animals in this sense. Rising sea levels can also affect sea turtles in a similar idea as the seals, except for when sea turtles lay their nest. Rising sea levels can possibly take away some of the beach areas that these sea turtles are laying their nests, just reduce the area. Can also, rising sea levels can cause more erosion to the beaches, which the beaches might be covered with more water, but there just might be less sand to also lay their nests. So sea turtles can be impacted in this way. Then we have rising temperatures. Rising temperatures can impact sea turtles. We're going to continue with the sea turtle theme for this this portion of it. Sea turtles, I don't know if you know this or not, but are actually the sex of the sea turtle is determined by the temperature of the nest. So the eggs more towards the bottom of the nest are more likely to be male. They're colder temperatures, and the eggs towards the top, which are typically warmer, are more than likely to be female. So
That I did not know.
it's one of my favorite fun facts about sea turtles. It baffles me. I love it. So with the rising temperatures, that can have a big impact on the ratio of males and females in sea turtle populations. And it's good to have a balance between the two for obvious reasons. So if the ratio gets thrown off in favor of one or the other, it's not good for the survival of that population. So rising temperatures can have a big impact on that. And then for whales, really any of these animals, but whales can be a big one, that rising temperatures can have a big impact on the food that these animals eat. So if the animals that they're eating are moving into different areas because they prefer colder or warmer waters, that's going to force whales, seals, anything that's going to be eating these items to follow them. So they might be going to new areas that you typically wouldn't see. So the distribution of these animals can change based off of what their food is doing. So some of the well-known animals that are changing their locations are the American lobster, black sea bass, and red hake. Those are shifting northward to colder waters. And that can have a big impact on any of the animals that are going to be eating them, but those are also big fishing industries. So going to throw in that it's going to have a big impact on humans and the fishers that rely on those for their livelihood.
So what was it? Lobsters, sea bass, did you say?
Yep, black sea bass and red hake. Those are just a couple examples of animals that have been seen shifting northward to stay in the colder waters.
Okay.
And then, just like you were talking about the permafrost melting, that's where this one is. So the melting ice can have a big impact on seals. So this is actually a harp seal pup. Doesn't look anything like the harp seal that I showed you in the other photo because that was an adult. So when they're born, they are this very, very white color. And as they grow older, they actually go through a couple of different changes for their fur pattern, but they end up as that previous photo that I showed you. So ice seals need the ice. They can haul out on it so they can rest, breeding reasons, but it also protects them from predators, whether they're predators coming from the water or from land, like polar bears and things like that can go after these seals, and the ice can give them some sort of protection. So with the melting ice, it'd be harder for them to have that protection and that area to haul out or anything like that. So this has a big impact on seals in particular. Now I'm going to get into ocean acidification. So ocean acidification is when the water gets more acidic. And so that means the pH levels decrease. And when that happens, there's a lot of reasons that it can happen. So climate change isn't just the only thing, and climate change can have a big impact for several reasons. But we're just going to go with the kind of the general way that the waters get more acidic, and that can allow for what's called harmful algal blooms. Have you ever heard of those before?
What did you say? What is it called?
Harmful algal blooms.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So like red tide. We've had a few of them on Long Island. This is actually a photo from 2016 of Greenpoint. Sorry, I don't want to say the wrong area. Center Point Harbor, sorry.
Okay.
And this actually looks like it's a lawn, but this is a harbor. So this is all green algae that is encompassing pretty much this harbor.
Wow.
So that's not a stream going through or anything like that. That is all water with just algae on top of it. So climate change can increase the chances of harmful algal blooms. And these harmful algal blooms can actually be very detrimental to marine life. They can prevent them, any of them that need air to be able to breathe. They can actually also become toxic, so they can poison animals, and then it can go up the food chain with whichever animals are going to be eating those. So some of the toxins produced from these algal blooms have actually been found in some of the larger whales, like a blue whale or humpback whale. So that's going really far up the food chain. And then that can also impact shellfish. So there can be shellfish poisoning from harmful algal blooms, and then that can get into any of the shellfish that people eat or any of the animals that eat shellfish. But it can also impact their the quality of the shell, or the thickness, and just the concentration of carbonate, which is what they rely on to build the shell. So this diagram here, this on the right side is a healthier oyster than the two on the left. So this is showing from right to left, this is showing the water getting more acidic.
Okay.
So the ones on the left here, the shells are a lot thinner, which can make them more fragile and just not as healthy. So with the decrease in shellfish, sea turtles do eat shellfish. Obviously people do, but also shellfish are big into water purification or filtration. So they can actually clean up the waters in a certain area. I don't know if either of you have heard of the Billion Oyster Project.
Yes.
So they're working on planting shellfish back into the area or certain areas around Long Island to improve water quality. So they can have a big impact on the area. So more acidic the water, the poorer the health for shellfish in this sense. Now we're going to get into some ways that you can help. And a lot of these ways can have a domino effect that I'm going to mention. But do you have any guesses or anything that you can think of that we can help this process?
Well, we have too many fertilizers.
Yep.
And that's a big problem.
Yep.
Because of the runoff.
Yep, definitely.
I keep telling myself I'm going to explore a more plant-based diet. I haven't done it yet,
Yep.
but it's one of my intentions.
Yep, it's a lot easier said than done. So that is those are big ones, and I'm going to talk about a couple different examples here. And like I said, these can have a domino effect. So you can make one small change and have a big impact in a lot of different areas. So this is just a picture of a bike. So it might be very straightforward in this sense, but it has a big impact on transportation. So if you are able to bike to certain areas or walk or run or just not use a vehicle as much, that can reduce the exhaust. It can reduce the demand for vehicles or use public transportation. So it can have a domino effect down the road where cars might not be as in demand or producing more bikes than cars or some sort of vehicle like that. It's part of what's called reducing your carbon footprint. So seeing how much carbon you produce in your everyday activities. So transportation is one of them. Recycling is a big one. So recycling what you can, but also getting away from single-use plastics. those can reach down all the way to the industry level where there's just not as much of a demand for them, or there's a demand for alternatives, possibly reusable, natural products being used. It can also be local products being used, and that can be applied to every industry, whether it's not just recycling, but also foods, clothing, any materials. So recycling is a big one. Like you said, Christine, reducing how much meat you consume. So this goes back to the livestock aspect of reducing the demand for livestock. So that would reduce the methane levels in particular, which in turn would reduce deforestation or needing to clear out large areas for the livestock. Livestock can also produce what's called overgrazing. So they can actually eat too much of an area, whether it's grass or anything like that, and make it not as productive. So I don't know if you've ever been to a farm or know a farmer, but they have different plots of land where they'll move their herds around to try to limit overgrazing. But that can be a big one for reducing meat consumption. So a lot of people might say just reducing meat consumption because it could possibly be a healthier choice, or for the humanity of the animals, but it has a big impact on climate change in general. So you can have that factored into your decision. And then also planting a bit more, whether it's trees, flowers, anything like that. This is kind of the counter argument for deforestation. Having more plants around can absorb more of the CO2, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It can absorb more of the nutrients in the soils, so reducing the amount of nitrogen that can end up being in the runoff, everything like that. So these are just a few. Oh, sorry, my power is flickering right now. I'm almost done with this presentation, so hopefully not too close. So this is kind of wrapping up a bit with some of the ways that you can help. There's a lot more ways that you can help, but these are just a few of them. And like I said, they can have a domino effect. So it's not just one simple thing, but one simple thing can lead to a lot of other things. So that's kind of the presentation that I have right now, and I'm really hoping my power lasts. So if I cut out, I apologize in advance. So I'm going to wrap it up with just a few more things about our organization and the animals that we work with. So I mentioned earlier that we do beach cleanups. So if you do a beach cleanup, we do ask that whatever you take with you, you take out with you. And if you do happen to find any more trash on the beaches, to clean it up if you feel comfortable. You know, COVID might throw that into a whirl, but also the animals that I mentioned earlier, they are federally protected. So it's actually by law that you have to stay 150 feet away from these animals. It's for your protection and the protection of the animals. It reduces their stress, makes everything easier for both you and the animal. And I did mention earlier that we do have a hotline. If you do come across any of these animals, whether they're sick, injured, or dead, I do ask that you take note of this hotline if you don't already have it in your phone or are not aware of it. But if you do come across any sea turtle or marine mammal that you think we should know about, please give that hotline a call. We do share this number with New York Marine Rescue Center. If you report the animal, the appropriate organization will call you back.
Okay.
So that is the presentation that I have for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have a lot of concerns.
What are your concerns?
Specifically, it's driving me crazy about the plastic. Every time I'm recycling the plastic, I'm just thinking about the birds. I'm like, some of the rings, the ring
Yep.
things with the juices. I'm cutting them because I'm thinking they're gonna wrap it around. I mean, it's ridiculous to
Yep.
think of
I did
these
that
things.
today. Yep.
And
Oh
to
yeah.
hear that it ends up in the fish, and oh man, and then we eat the fish. It's like crazy.
Yes, it's never a one and done thing. There's a
Yeah.
lot of consequences to very simple actions.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the hardest things I think for people is the out of sight, out of mind way
Yeah.
of thinking. And sometimes when you throw out something, it doesn't necessarily end up at a waste facility.
Right.
It could fly out the back of a dumpster or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's really hard, and that's one of the biggest things we think about when we do the beach cleanups is where we're finding a lot of trash,
Right.
and that's why we're always promoting people to get out and do beach cleanups wherever they can, even if you're just going out to the beach to enjoy it with family or something like that. Even if you pick up a couple pieces of trash, imagine if everyone could do that and you could have hundreds and hundreds of people at the beach.
Right.
And that could possibly mean hundreds and hundreds of pieces of plastic being cut or pollution being picked up.
Right.
Hopefully there's not that many pieces, but sadly there is in some areas. So
Right. I know we watched a show recently. I don't know if it was on Nat Geo or what it was, but it was some remote island that you could never imagine, but they have debris floating in, plastics, you know, everything. And it's one of the remotest places on Earth. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And you hear about those gyrodyne swirling garbage pools, and to see them, how big they are. And it's just, you know, it's overwhelming. How are we going to get rid of that?
Yeah, it's hard. And that's another aspect where you can bring in the global conveyor belt. So a piece of trash that ends up in the ocean, say off of the east coast of the US, can actually end up in Europe. It can travel, or on the opposite side, off the coast of, say, California, Washington, Oregon, anything like that, it can end up in Asia, or vice versa. So
yeah,
it can travel.
Yeah.
I think that I like to look at the glass half full, and I think that we definitely can do a lot to change this, and I have been working with a lot of our colleagues in the environmental industry. You know, there's a big movement for offshore wind, renewable energy, and stuff like that. So I think that while I agree it's overwhelming the amount of damage that we've done to our planet in the last 100 years or so, but I do think that it's important that we all remember that these little steps that we can take in our everyday lives will, like Eric said, have a domino effect and can really make a bigger impact.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping, you know, going forward that whoever's in office, that we do have more solar, more green energy. I mean, it's got to happen. It's got to happen.
I agree.
Yeah, we'll see where that road takes us.
I know.
But I do want to actually say like a quick anecdote with Ali saying that small domino effects, but also our small actions can have a big impact. We actually had one of our newer volunteers doing a beach cleanup just by herself. She does it all the time. She did it prior to learning about our organization. She heard about our organization, started volunteering, and she's actually, I'm going to say, recruited a few new volunteers for us because they see her out there by herself cleaning up the beaches, and they stop and ask her why she's doing it. And she's a very, very passionate individual, and she just talks to them, and her passion is contagious. So she's inspired other people to get involved and do what they can. So it's a domino effect. If you
Mhm.
can get other people to do small actions like that, it can lead to a big action.
Right. Well, thank you so much for this. This is wonderful. I wish more people had turned out for it, but
Yeah,
I
well,
think,
we do have a few more individuals, and I think that we will try and reschedule this as well, because
Okay.
you never know what happened with power outages and stuff.
oh yeah,
So
there's a lot out. I didn't realize before I came on, they said there were 300,000 on Long Island without power. So it is
Yeah.
bad. And a lot of trees down.
definitely. So we're definitely willing to reschedule this presentation, and hopefully talking with Christine about other presentations that we can give to engage
Okay.
your communities. And we always are willing to talk to anyone. So if you have a community group you're part of, or we enjoy talking to young people. So please let us know. That
Okay.
is one of the many ways you can get involved with us, is helping to bring our message to other groups of people. As Eric mentioned, we have volunteers who support our work, so you're welcome. We love people to volunteer with us, become a member, make a donation, anything that you can think of to help us continue trying to
Mhm.
promote conservation through action is greatly appreciated.
Yep.
Christine, did you have anything you wanted to close out with?
Yeah, not specifically. I mean, thank you to the both of you. It was a wonderful presentation, and yeah, I apologize for the small audience, but it's great to be able to speak with anybody too. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
everything that you guys are doing, and we hope to be speaking with you again soon.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good
You're
night,
welcome.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good-
everyone.
Christine, thank you so much for hosting us. We really appreciate working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
As
Take
I
care.
mentioned earlier, we have this